Sorry to bother you, but have you and Dad talked about me getting a smartphone yet? It's January 2022, and Lena, 9 years, is standing at the other end of the kitchen table with her hands clasped. I'm on my own smartphone, filling out the 5th COVID screener of the morning. This one for Lena's hip-hop dance class this afternoon. Lena, I can't talk about that right now, I snip. Then mostly to myself, I say, what do you mean the stupid form cannot be submitted as is? Oh, Mom, that seems very frustrating. But I just can't stop thinking about a phone. When do you and Dad think you're going to be able to talk about it? At 9, petite Lena has a genuine smile and a sweet, slightly gravelly voice. She's thoughtful and emotionally mature for her age. But this question about a cell phone, I can't count how many times she's already asked me this week, and I can barely look at her. I am so irritated. I picture myself at 9. My first day of 4th grade at a new school. I had on the cheapest sneakers my mom could find, pink and white Velcro with a blonde Barbie drawn and written on the outsides of each shoe. I just jumped from the platform to the 3rd monkey bar when, and you'll have to remember this is decades before Greta Gerwig directed her box office hit. Oh my God, I'm like in 3rd grade and I would never wear those shoes. Only babies play with Barbies and need Velcro. Ashley Z looked like she could have been the human version of the Barbies on my shoes, and she talked like she always had gum in her mouth. I landed on the gravel below, looked at her leather high-top sneakers laced all the way. I know how to tie shoes, I mumbled. The shoes I wore last year, but she was skipping away, chanting, Barbie shoes, Barbie shoes. I wanted different shoes, but I didn't ask for them. My mom uses this, my not asking for them, as an example of what a good kid I was. Lynnette was such a good girl that even when she was teased about her shoes at school, she didn't ask for different ones. All right, this is not a story about how we shouldn't ask for things we want. I don't believe that. But I'm curious how not asking for things became synonymous with being good in my family. I remember that on a few occasions that I dared to ask for something. Ballet lessons, to let my hair grow long. The first time I'd be met by my mom's simple explanations. You already know how to dance. Or, the nutrients will go to your hair instead of to your body. If I asked a second time, I'd be met with a narrowing of my mom's eyes, a look that meant, don't even think about asking me again. Once, my parents were going out, leaving me and my younger siblings with a babysitter. I was around 7 years old, and I'd cried and begged for them to take me with them. As my parents were walking out the door, I was still crying, so my dad turned back into the room. For a second, I thought, he's coming back for me. But then he bent down, his face red, and smacked the palm of his hand to my thigh before slamming the door behind him. I stared at the raised pink outline of his fingers on my skin as I fell asleep that night. So as Lena is standing at the end of the table, wringing her hands and saying to me again, I just want to talk about the possibility of a cell phone. There is a voice inside my head telling me, put your foot down, Lynnette. You're in charge. She's morphing into an entitled little monster before your very eyes. You would never have even thought about asking for... I press my thumbs to my forehead and I take a deep breath. Honey, why don't you write down a list of reasons you would like a phone? Write it all down on a piece of paper, and Dad and I will take a look at it later. Her eyes get big, her back gets straighter, her lips pressed together. Okay, Mom, I'll do that. Ha! You're too soft, some parents say to me when they hear interactions like these. You're the parent, aren't you? And yes, I am the parent. But what does being the parent mean to me? 12 years ago, before having kids, neither my spouse John nor I really had a lot of sense of what kinds of parents we'd be. At our pumpkin-themed baby shower, my friend David asked me over hot apple cider, "So what's your parenting philosophy?" I shrugged. "Wait, what do you mean?" He was a single guy, no kids, but he said, tiger mom, homeschool, you're gonna be strict, they're gonna speak a different language. I really didn't know. I had a loose sense of how I envisioned my life as a parent. I'd be loving. Maybe I'd try to speak to them in my native tongue, sing to them a lot, but I never really thought about what it meant to be the parent. Then in November 2012, I met Lena face to face for the first time. I was sweaty with adrenaline when she was placed on top of me. Her eyes were wide open. Clocking in at just under 7 pounds and only minutes old, Lena started scooting up toward my breasts. I supported her body as she pushed with all her might. "Go, Lena, go!" My parents, our nurse, John, all half cheered her on, half held their breath. None of us had ever seen anything like this in real life before. With an amazing feat of strength, Lena hoisted her huge head toward my breast. She missed my nipple the first time, so I held it toward her, giving her space to try again. With just a few more tries, she did it. Her neck and back muscles flexing as she found my breast and latched with just a little help. At that moment, it hit me hard. Lena is a person, an individual with will, agency, instinct, and a voice. Now, this is not a story about how everyone needs to breastfeed. I don't believe that. It just happens that while in our nursing relationship, I came to trust my child as a collaborator. I found that Lena was not the helpless newborn I had heard she would be. I found that I understood her better than I expected to, and that while she could not speak with words yet, she had so much to say. Against the advice of some books and websites, I found myself nursing her when she wanted to be nursed, holding her when she wanted to be held. Once while I was pregnant with our second child, I sat with an old friend on the playground watching our kids play. Lena toddled over me and asked to nurse, so I lifted her onto my lap and she nursed over my very large belly. "So you're going to wean her soon, right? You can't nurse 2 babies at once." Honestly, she doesn't seem ready to stop. My friend raised an eyebrow at me. "I mean, you're the mom, aren't you? Who's in charge here?" I did eventually nurse 2 babies at the same time. I did it until they told me they were ready to stop, for far longer than I thought was possible. Through our nursing relationship, my kids taught me that they and my body are incredible. I found that a lot of choices I've made as a mom get met with that question. Who's in charge? Particularly when I let my kids initiate things like when to wean, or when to start using the toilet, or whether or not they'll eat what's on the table, or say hello to someone. Truthfully, even when I'm not asked the question, I ask it of myself. Am I just some huge sucker who doesn't have control over my kids? Have I been tricked into giving up control by listening to what they want and taking their opinions into consideration? Am I a bad parent? Because isn't parenting all about being in charge? Later, on that same January day back in 2022, I sat in bed scrolling on my phone the irony. A white piece of paper slid under the door. I nudged John and I tiptoed over to it. It was folded in half the hot dog way, and written on the outside in black marker was, "Why I want a phone." I unfolded the paper to reveal a bullet-pointed list written in bubbly half cursive. It included things like, "I would text you if I need something and you're not there. I would online shop at places like Claire's. And finally, it would make me feel more grown up." John and I smiled at each other. That last one in particular got him the most. Right? When I was a kid and I said I wanted to feel more grown up, I was met with responses like, "Why don't you act more grown up then?" Or, "Stop being in such a rush to grow up. You're lucky to be a kid." John's parents would say, "So you're going to start paying rent and the bills then, I guess." I felt tempted to respond to Lena with one of these canned responses. But when I think about what Lena means when she says she wants to feel more grown up, I think it means that she wants a say. She wants her voice to be heard. So maybe you're wondering what we decided. Every year, the popular Wait Till 8th pledge, where parents vow not to get their children's cell phones until at least the 8th grade, gets fervently circulated on our school's parent Facebook group. After all, we did not have phones when we were her age, and we want to protect her from the big, scary internet, from predators on social media, from online bullying, from addiction to devices. We want to preserve her childhood years, so our parental instincts said no. But we decided to take a risk and trust Lena's intuition. So yes, by the end of March 2022, we added another smartphone to the family plan. This is not a story about how everyone needs to get their kid a cell phone. I don't believe that. But through parenting a child's collaborator with phone, our family is constantly learning more about our relationships with each other and with our phones. Recently, after calling the family to dinner, I sat in my chair frantically trying to schedule one thing or another on my cell phone. I felt a soft hand on my back and looked up to see Lena's face. "Hey, Mom, I know you're probably doing something very important right now, but our agreement is that there's no phones at the dinner table," she said with a wink. And while I had a flash of wanting to lay some smack down about who was the parent, I chose to smile back and hand over my phone. What does it mean to be the parent? I didn't end up teaching the kids Chinese, but I do sing along. I find that I'm less interested in what I have to teach them and more interested in what we're all learning together. In our home, parents are in charge, but we don't control our kids. We control ourselves. We make final decisions, shape the rules, create the structure. Our kids control themselves. They're empowered to speak up, to notice, and to share, to dissent, to check and balance, and to hold us and each other accountable. It may be more time-consuming and taxing, but I like being in charge this way. It looks a lot like the world I want to live in.
One more time to Lynnette Li for her story. So Lynnette's story was all about talking to the young people in our lives and treating them as though they have voice, as though they have agency, learning what that might have felt like for her when she was little. And as we know, right, we are raising the next voters in our country, in our city, right? And so we want to make sure that they know that they have a voice, that they have agency. And there are lots of small ways we can not only let those folks know that, but we can remind ourselves of our sense of self and that we have a voice and we have agency, right? And so before the story, I asked you all to consider, I'm going to be loud because I'm going to turn around. I asked you all to consider this question up here. What are some of the small ways we can create the world and community we want to live in? We talked about this before the show, so we want to give you some of the examples we thought of, but invite you all to think about some of your own. Showing our kids that we trust them, that was some of what Lynnette was talking about. Giving a neighbor a cup of sugar without expecting one back later. That one's kind of hard sometimes because you want to do a tit for tat. I'm definitely one of those people, but you have to kind of remind yourself that giving is about giving, right? And support is about support. And then finally, our community also includes ourselves, and I think that's something that folks have some trouble with sometimes, especially when we're raising families, when we are dealing with things that are happening in our communities. So we want to remember to be kind to ourselves when we make mistakes, when we aren't necessarily walking the exact path that we've talked about or planned for. So thank you again to Lynnette. Before we hear our second, let me talk a little less loud now. Before we hear our second storyteller, I want to just quickly just name the other folks who were involved in today's performance. You all have been listening to original music by Jeff Schaller behind me. We're also joined today by Jess Hutchinson, Drumm, and Carolyn Aguila, who are all members of our Second Story community. And I'm now going to introduce our second storyteller. This storyteller is going to be talking a little bit about impacting young people's lives again, so be watching out for that and hearing how this story is different from Lynnette's and how they also have some similarities. Before we come into this story, I'll invite you to think a little bit more about how we embody civic responsibility. What does it actually look like in action to do things in our everyday, in the roles that we hold, using the power that we have to embody civic responsibility? And so with that, I want to introduce our next storyteller reading Technicolor Me, Jasmin Cardenas.
For 10-year-old Jasmin. The friends were too close and the windows were too big. I did sit along a wall of windows to my left in my 4th grade year, but the teacher stood in the front and to the right, where potentially I would be paying attention to her and not distracted by the windows. And I would be able to theoretically focus on the lesson if I just looked at her. But the world outside my window and that little robin working so hard to build that nest in that tree outside my 4th grade classroom was so much more interesting than anything Miss Jennings had to say. And she'd always catch me. Jasmin, will you tell us where the preposition is in that sentence? And I turned my head instantly, feeling hot, realizing I had no idea what she was talking about. How long had I drifted off for? What page were we on? Today, Mrs. Schultz ushers me to the front of her classroom. As I walk, the kids' eyes follow me. We've never met before. They are leaning in, interested. One has his arms, down on the table and his head down. Maybe napping. As I set my stuff down, I realize I am now standing in front of the window with that big oak tree right outside. I am now competing with the windows. Even at 40, the life and activity surrounding rounding a big gorgeous tree to me is cool to watch, and so I give myself a mental note. Walk by it later. Okay, focus. I start. Before Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, people lived on this land. I tell a few of my go-to stories in English to give them some polished material, and now I'm trying to make my way to those new bilingual stories I've been working on for this national festival that I was going to be performing at in Utah the very next week. My mommy and papi, why, they came from the Andean mountains of Colombia, but I was born right here in Chicago, Illinois. Whose parents are born in another country? I ask. And this little redhead, about 9 or 10 years old, shoots her hand up with purpose and fire. I call on her. My mommy and my papi y mis abuelos, they're from Colombia. Yo soy colombiana too. I'm Colombian too. Her freckled face is beaming and her head is red curly waves of hair. They're just wild. Other hands reach up to the sky. We speak Gujarati at home. My grandparents came from India. My parents came from Texas. I get nothing from the little boy with his head down. No one seems to find it strange, so I imagine he often needs a bit of a nap. Poor kid. Maybe he's like me and he didn't sleep well last night. Or maybe like me, bedtime was this loose moving target depending on what came up. Family birthdays that started a las 8 de la noche, late night runs to El Pastor Jaramillo's house, to get that home office signature on some documents. Or maybe that weekly late night pickup to get my tia from the Lawrence metro stop so she wouldn't have to walk home from cleaning houses, her work on the North Shore. I get to the next story. Who knows how to say peekaboo in Japanese? The kids all look at me with surprised eyebrows. Inai, inai, ba. Surprised, the kids start laughing so loud that they startled that little boy with his head down. I teach the whole class how to say inai, inai, ba. I explained that this next story is originally from Japan, but I asked the storyteller, Hiroko Fujita, for permission to tell her story bilingually with Spanish and adapt the Japanese finger plays and lullabies to Latino ones. The little redhead. Why did you ask her permission? Well, Hiroko is what we call a traditional teller, and so she learned her stories from listening to her elders. Would it be okay if I told your abuela's story without knowing her? And worse yet, I changed it and pretended it was mine? No. Several voices shoot back at me. Exactly. So now we know how to say peekaboo in Japanese. Who knows, quién sabe, how to say peekaboo en español? The kids look at each other, wondering. Silence. And then I hear, ojitos! The little boy with his head down is sitting up. He's picked his head up, dark brown hair, big, thick Frida eyebrows, and he's showing me, ojitos! Ojitos! A few of the kids whip their heads around so fast with surprised faces, their peer is sitting up on one knee, showing and gesturing with his words. And I notice that everyone seems a little extra excited about learning from this little boy. So I jump into the telling of the story. A hungry robber enters a house and sees an old couple way out in the far backyard working in their garden and decides he can be fast. He'll just take what he needs. He walks into the kitchen and sees a canister of rice. Oh, good, he was hungry. Just as he opens the canister and is about to scoop out some rice, he hears, giggling, the kids jump in. Even the little boy with dark brown hair and curls is giggling and leaning in. He's rested his head back down sideways on his arms. The robber goes looking for the baby who's making all that noise. If he doesn't quiet that baby down, the abuelos will come inside. The robber finds the baby in her crib and begins to get her attention. Ojitos, ojitos. The kids are instantly giggling, and they jump in with me. Ojitos, ojitos. That baby calms down, and the robber rushes back to the kitchen to scoop out the rice from his own bag when again he hears, wah, wah. Rushes back to that room. Oh, ojitos, ojitos. Nothing. Baby is not impressed. He thinks fast. Arepitas, arepitas, pa, mama. Arepitas, arepitas, pa, pa, pa. And then I hear, no, esa no va así. Tortillas para mamá. Tortillas para papá. That little boy with dark brown hair is about to airlift out of his chair trying to correct my song. At this same moment, simultaneously, multidimensionally, I see it all in slow motion. The two adults which were organizing and stacking some papers in the back stop. They look towards the boy, shocked. They whisper back and forth simultaneously. At the same time, these two little girls who are craning their necks over to see him, they almost fall over. And the boys in the back row, they do a double take. All eyes are on the boy who is no longer sleeping. I'm smiling because I've pulled him in. His Spanish is perfect. An authentic Espanol, no brokenness. Mine is more accented than his. Sí, tienes razón. También se puede decir tortillitas. You're right. That's what they say in Mexico. Arepitas is the Colombian version. ¿Cómo te llamas? Carlitos. Yo soy de México. ¿Qué son arepas? Son como tortillas porque son hechas de maíz, pero son más gordas y tienen queso. En Colombia no tenemos tortillas. Es más como una gordita. I realize that our back and forth is being watched by the whole class. Even the teachers have stopped what they're doing. They're staring at us in amazement. And I translate back to everyone what we were just talking about. And then I get back to the story with the robber. But this next time, when the baby's no longer distracted by the simple ojitos or arepitas, the robber tries a new song. Ping-pong es un muñeco. Carlitos jumps right in. Ping-pong es un muñeco muy guapo y de cartón. Se lava la carita con agua y con jabón. No one else knows this song. Only Carlitos and I are singing. Se desenreda el pelo con peine de marfil. And then Carlitos begins teaching everyone the song and the hand movements. Y aunque se das tirones, no llore ni hace así. Carlitos must be a new arrival. I have seen so many Carlitos in my storytelling travels. In Kansas, Missouri, it was a third grader from Guatemala, quiet and uninterested upon his first step in the classroom with me. But then a spark begins when I welcome their ideas in Espanol and I include them in on the action. They always jump in. At the Edgewater Chicago Public Library, it was about 7 Venezuelan kids teaching us the Venezuelan version of the Itsy Bitsy Spider. I'll never forget the surprise and delight that I felt listening to them sing a familiar song in a totally new way. It's something I saw on the expressions of all of us that afternoon. Mostly, what I see are kids that go from existing in black and white to beaming in Technicolor. When I walk out of the room that day, the adult that was in the back at the table who was cutting paper, he walks out with me and tells me, "That was really good. Carlos is not usually like that. Thanks, that was really good." Walking back to my car, I'm happy. Happy that it felt like a positive experience for everyone. Happy that it helped me get ready for Utah and that storytelling festival I'm going to. But mostly happy and a little warm inside, watching how Carlos came out of his shell, knowing that he got to be the leader that day. He got to speak and move and play confidently, something that I rarely felt myself at his age. And even if it wasn't a big deal for him, at least I knew he felt included. I walk around the long way back to my car so I can walk up to that big old oak tree and just put my hands on her bark, grateful for its ragged edges. And I observe the ants busily at work. Later that afternoon, I got an email from that teacher, Mrs. Schultz. I'm not sure you noticed, but when one of our students loudly sang that Mexican lullaby, the teachers were especially astounded. This student has spent the entire school year in kind of a reluctant and silent state. We have purposely asked questions and done all we could to engage and include that child, that student, as we do for all of our children, but with little success. When he sang loudly in class, it was like a breakthrough. This letter, it was all the affirmation of what I sensed was going on for Carlos, but the true story that I didn't know. When I visit schools, oftentimes I can see that person who's disengaged and is like falling away in real time. I remember being that kid myself, with my head down on the desk or staring off into the clouds. But back then, there was no ESL support, English as a second language, or IEP accommodations, independent education plans. You were just that kid that couldn't translate fast enough to answer the math relay race equation on the board, with everyone staring at you, so no one picked you to be on their team. Or the kid during out loud reading time that spent the entire time counting heads and then sentences ahead so that you could put your mouth around the words and sound them out quietly before it was your turn to do it out loud. So much anxiety that afterward, you couldn't answer summary questions about whatever you had just read. As a teacher myself, I just know not to put kids on the spot competing to see who can think faster. I welcome all levels of engagement and participation. I know that just by walking in the door, a bilingual, bicultural person, una colombiana americana, I am what I never had growing up, not in grade school, not in high school, not in college, a Latina teacher. If Storyteller Me had walked into Miss Schultz's room and 8-year-old Jasmin had walked up to her, I'm sure I would have sang, Los pollitos dicen, pío, 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 cuando tienen hambre, cuando tienen frío. But instead, I assimilated, and I figured out how to get along. I think I'm still looking for that Latina teacher to step into my life and mentor me into my Technicolor state. But in the meantime, when I see me, a little me out there in the world, a bit withdrawn and disconnected, I'll just try to draw them into the action of the day. And sometimes it works. And I walk out beaming. Technicolor Me. Thank you.
Okay, one more time for Jasmin and Lynnette, please. So, I asked you all, what are some of the ways that we can model civic responsibility in our communities. And some of the answers we came up with are signing up to volunteer with your neighborhood club, alderperson's office, or community center. You probably have heard a little bit of that already today. Do your part to keep your community clean, even if it's not your trash. This is something I really struggle with my husband. Attend town halls, community forums, and other public events in your community and neighborhood. At Second Story, these are stories that folks have lived. It's their lived experience. They are the people who wrote and developed these stories. I was lucky enough to work with Jasmin as she was developing Technicolor Me. It is a really transformative experience. If you want to attend any of our shows, you can find us at secondstory.com. We believe, our company's belief is that stories have the power to change the world. They tell us what's important to us. They tell us how we choose to move around in our communities and in our world. And these two stories hopefully provided an example of that for you today. So I want to thank you all for being here with us and for having our stories be part of your City Civic Day. Thank you. And I hope that you'll come see us online. We've got shows every month. And if you're interested in having us in your community, please let one of us know, and we'd be happy to talk to you. Thank you all so much.
Yes, una bulla. Big round of applause for Vince Pagan-Hill and Jeff Shaler. Y'all, Second Story, the power of narrative is so important, so thank you so much. This has been Second Story. What season are you in now, Vince? 26. That's ridiculous. That's amazing. And is this your first time hearing about Second Story in this room? Wow. Okay, great. The power of narrative is so important and palpable. Please continue to look at their work and follow their work. It has been such a pleasure. How was Chicago Civic Day for you? Do we need more of this? Can we tell DCASE and DPD that we want more of this? Absolutely. So please, again, if you have taken any pictures today, if you have any notes or thoughts, or even if you do a live on the way home, please don't do it in the car, because I know people who do that. But if you want to take a reflection, please, use social media. I think that's a platform that's very powerful for our voices, but also for our reach, right? It's like you have the reach, we have the reach, and now we know that this exists. Because Second Story has been around for 26 seasons, and we're just now knowing it exists because we're in space together. So this is how it works, right? Please amplify. I want to take a minute to say thank you and the biggest, deepest gratitude for Malcolm X College for hosting us today, all of the staff, all of the amazing volunteers that have brought us together. Also, round of applause to our translator and our transcriber who has not moved, Melissa. We have not moved today. Thank you so much for making this event accessible for everyone. Want to make sure we give a huge shout out to all of the partners that we've had today, making sure our events and arts have gone well and smooth. Somos Arte, Ink Factory, Mecca Elevated, and Lady Soul. Did you go to the sound? Anybody did the sound healing? That was incredible. I was in the ethereal world. So it was just really intentional, and the food was amazing. I'm telling you, I've been to a lot of these things, and I'm tired of pizza and Jimmy John's. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? They had hot food. They had pasta. That's it. Just right there, level up, 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. My name is Melissa DuPrey of the Hubble Park DuPreys. You can catch me on Instagram at Boom Boom DuPrey. I also have a website. If you have an event, if you have a fundraiser, if you have an organization that you're really trying to amplify your social justice-based mission to your board members who might not be part of that community, please hire me. Please let me know how I can help and connect and bridge that gap between the mission and the people, right? Like, let's connect and let's continue to amplify each other. I'm also a solo artist and an educator. So if you have a school or a program that you really want to build personal performed narrative, I do that. I teach how to write your own story from the page to the stage and then self-produce it, because we don't wait for work, we make the work. It's been such a pleasure to have you here in this space. Thank you for your energy, your attention, and also your generosity with each other. I've seen so much care with each other all day today. We are so excited about this next chapter. Please take care of yourselves and each other as we move into these next few months. Please, please, please continue to remind yourselves we are the change that we want to see. We have to walk it, we have to do it, we lead by example, and you have a community. It's just right there within your reach. Thank you all so much, and please be safe going home.